Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with this. I made a mistake in the last episode, and fortunately, people responded, and I corrected it, and I certainly wanted to correct the record here. As it turns out, Kash Patel was not wearing Q cufflinks, or cufflinks with a Q on them. I thought that that's exactly what I was looking at, and upon further examination and closer-up photographs, in fact, direct photographs from Getty Images, as even you can see him shaking the hand of Tom Tillis, and then I screenshotted that, and then I zoomed in, cleared it up, and sure enough, it's not a Q cufflink. So, my apologies on that. Again, I'm a dork, I'm looking at cufflinks while planes are falling out of the sky, allegedly, so... You know, I mean, that's where my head goes from time to time. I'm looking for teeny little clues. But anyway, I wanted to start off with that because if I ever get something wrong, I certainly want to correct the record on it. And that was wrong. In fact, I found it a bit odd that people weren't necessarily responding quickly to it when I first posted it out there because, again, if I got it wrong, I wanted to be corrected. Fortunately, I ended up putting it on greatawakening.win, and some people in the comments, even though it got 200 some odd likes and views, fortunately there were people in the comments who corrected the record with better photographs. So I responded to those people and was like, yep, my bad, my mistake, not a Q cufflink. With that said, I think this provides a pretty nice opportunity to sort of highlight something. That given the fact that all of this so-called news and the war continues to go on, of course, certainly at breakneck speed with all the information that's coming out, and it's coming out too quickly, of course, for people to even grasp and handle. But it's in moments like this, I think, where a lot of people are going to get a lot of things wrong. And I think that that's happening right now with some regularity. Again, perhaps not at the fault of the individual making a particular post or making a particular comment, but it's hard to figure out, again, who's really telling the truth out there, certainly on social media, and who out there is purposefully, with, again, nefarious motives, trying to get individuals to focus in on one particular area when the answer is actually way over here. So they're in completely opposite directions, essentially. Excuse me. So let me give you, again, one of the examples. Regarding the Blackhawk helicopter crash into the plane and those falling into the Potomac, it's pretty evident based on the video footage that it was intentional. There's also ample footage, certainly from radar, that shows other planes dodging this helicopter. That apparently seems to be a thing. With that said, it was rather interesting, again, that everybody immediately jumped on this notion that the pilot of the helicopter was a tranny in the military. That it was a guy pretending to be a girl, they had a picture of the person, they had their name, and it was immediately out there. Again, massive accounts on social media instantly ran with that story. So-called, again, truth tellers and alternative media and whatever else. And I stood back and I watched all of that and I thought, nah, I'm not gonna comment on any of this. This seems a bit strange. Again, pay attention to the fact that I'm looking at cufflinks, not who's flying who's flying a helicopter. But either way, it was just strange because then it wasn't that long after that where the very individual who was pretending to be a woman who was actually a guy puts out a video and says, "Hi, I'm alive. I wasn't piloting the helicopters, so I don't know why people are saying it's me." And then that was the end of that story. But again, you didn't see anybody redacting that story or saying, "Whoops, my bad, sorry, didn't get it right." I mean, those posts are still on their pages, which is a bit odd. So again, some of these people, I think, expose themselves as potentially, again, being nefarious accounts or, associated with, I don't know, one three-letter agency after another. I mean, who's to really tell? But regarding that entire scenario, again, the theories bouncing around are all over the place. Was it, again, remote controlled? Was it intentional? Again, they highlighted 3 other pilots that allegedly were on the helicopter at the exact same time, and 2 of them were male, and then just recently the third one is apparently female. Again, people are claiming that this is a lesbian by the name of Rebecca Loback. And that this was the individual, again, who was piloting the Blackhawk with over 500 hours of time behind that type of helicopter, apparently. But again, who's to even say that any of that's even true? There was this one theory bouncing around again, which I wanted to make mention of. Again, I don't know if this holds any weight or not, but I'm just going to read it, and I don't know, I think it's just food for thought. But there was this post bouncing around. I put it on Gab. I reposted it on X, and it says the following, quote, "The tragic helicopter plane collision was a deliberate crash, likely remotely executed via avionics hackers, IBM Northrop Versal IDF Unit 8200, and was designed to serve as a warning message, quote unquote, to deter certain potential COVID whistleblowers from Duke University, Hollywood, China, and Israel from ever coming forward in the future. Because Israel is fucked if they ever do." It goes on, it says, "But now, since they'll likely bow out, understandably so, in order to protect their loved ones and mourn their tragic losses, I thought it might be a good idea if I went ahead, took the yoke from them, and did the whistleblowing myself. This way they don't have to worry about it anymore and can freely grieve with their families in peace. They've suffered enough. You effing Israel Jew terrorists can come after me and our whole crew instead if you're really feeling froggy. Say when," and then C word, "we effing dare you." And then it says, now that that's out of the way and without further ado, here's what's up, folks. Rebecca Loback, she was the daughter of David Loback, Duke University Medicine, LMU Informatics HHS, and Elizabeth Loback, New Regency. It says David Franklin Loback, Duke University School of Medicine, Chief of Division Clinical Informatics, Associate Consulting Professor, Duke Family Medicine Program, Endocrinology Consultant, and then it says LMU Informatics, VP of Health Informatics, and then it says CDSIC Project, LMU Informatics Co-Investigator. It says, note number 1, Duke University is run by trustee chairman and Mossad asset Laureen Sperling, who is also the chairman of Combined Jewish Philanthropies, CJP, and is married to Thermo Fisher PCR Tests lead director Scott Sperling. Thermo Fisher equals Temasek, out of Singapore. It says CJP equals Boston UJA FJNA / Mossad. It says, note number 2, Duke University School of Medicine is led by Dean Nancy Andrews, who is the chairman of Wellcome Burroughs. Welcome Farrar, who sits on the board of directors at Novartis, if I'm saying that right, and is a senior advisor to NIH executive leadership, Anthony Fauci. The next note, note number 3, it says Duke Kunshan is a partnership between Duke University and Wuhan University, and it officially opened its doors in 2013, which is the same year that David Rubenstein, Duke Capital Partners, Carlyle Group, Booz Allen Hamilton, CFR, Brookings, etc., became the chairman of the Duke University Board of Trustees. It says both David Rubenstein and Laureen Sperling are currently on the advisory board of Duke Kunshan University in Wuhan, China. It goes on here, it says Cliffs. It says Duke University is arguably the most implicated school in America with regard to the COVID pandemic conspiracy and the creation and release of COVID and cover-up of COVID's origins. This is especially horrifying the moment you realize COVID was 100% an intentionally calibrated biological weapon that was intentionally released as an attack on the white European race worldwide by an untold number of Mossad Jews and their global Jew supremacy counterparts. It says, and they carried out this attack because they still blame us for some Holocaust they've been tricked into believing actually happened by their parents, who'd also been tricked themselves by theirs. It says Alvin Conrad and Scott Gottlieb, both known Mossad assets, were directly involved here. Michael Bloomberg, too. It goes on here regarding the mother now of Rebecca Loback, and it says Elizabeth Lee Loback, New Regency Productions Development, Writer's Assistant, Office Assistant, Analyst, and Script Editor, 20th Century Fox, Post-Production Office Assistant, Research, and Analyst. It says, note, New Regency Productions is founded by Israeli spy Arnon Milchan, if I'm saying that right, one of Netanyahu's closest operatives and Israel's most legendary spies. It says he was literally effing integral in helping Israel steal our effing nuclear secrets several decades ago. It says Arnon's son, Yariv Milchan, is currently the chairman and CEO of New Regency Productions. It then says that he is from Rehovot, Israel, which is also where Weizmann Institute is located, one of the major labs behind calibrating COVID to target white people, unquote. Again, I have no reason to necessarily doubt that. I find it odd, again, that she was a White House employee under Biden and in the Biden White House, certainly for approximately 4 years, and then all of a sudden finds her way back, behind a Blackhawk helicopter? Again, I don't know what to believe here. I don't know what's going on. I know that we're at war. I know that deception is the name of the game. And I know that 2 crashes allegedly happening that close to one another certainly is not an accident. And that, again, anything that the media is showing you is certainly not the full story. Now, with that said, let's take a look at the so-called plane crash in Philadelphia. You have the Super Bowl, where the Philadelphia Eagles, of course, are playing. You have ring cam footage of what appears to be a plane and or a missile of some sorts falling from the sky, hitting, and then, of course, exploding all over the place. But then Fox News, and even on, again, social media, and it reeked of 9/11 and the fake plane crash at the Pentagon, where they're showing you the side of a fuselage, and there's no damage to it whatsoever. I mean, yes, it's broken apart, but it's not dirty on the outside. It's clean. It's completely white, and there doesn't appear, again, to be any damage other than, of course, a window being broken out and, the inside, of course, being torn apart, but the outside is almost flawless. And then they zoom in on another oxygen tank, basically, and the oxygen tank doesn't have a scratch on it. It's not dark. It's not in pieces. It hasn't exploded. It just looks clean. So again, is it CGI? It could be. I have no idea. Did someone just place it there after the fact? It's possible. I really have no idea. But again, there's ample footage out there also on the internet showing the crater of where this apparent explosion initially occurred, or where impact was made, and it's a crater. And then, of course, they show you other craters of other pictures where it shows a missile hitting the ground, and it looks very much the same. So, again, I know that there's footage out there of individuals, screaming that a plane fell out of the sky. Even individuals who were at the scene and right there as it happened. One particular guy, again, was in a drive-thru, and then he ran around the drive-thru, got out of his car, and started filming. You couldn't necessarily see any plane pieces, but you could certainly, again, see fire and a number of other things, and certainly some damage. Basically, I'm just going to chalk this up to I have no idea what's going on. And what I do know is that if it were a missile, let's run with that just for a second. If we're actually a missile, there's no way that the American government could tell you that it was a missile. Because if it was a missile, all hell would break loose. Certainly, again, from a domestic standpoint, people, your average American citizen would start losing their mind. Why are we being attacked by missiles? Again, you have Donald Trump earlier talking about Iron Dome technology, so to speak. And they basically already have that kind of technology anyway, but then again, you have this explosion occurring, where again, people died. And it's upward of, at least what they're saying, is close to 1,000 people. And apparently that number is coming from some kind of an emergency classification designation that's been designated. And basically, again, it was something I saw online, and it openly said that if your designation is at this particular level, then you're talking about casualties in the thousands, or certainly high 100s. So if that's to be believed, and if that's true, well, okay, doesn't seem like the media is talking about any of that either. It just seems all very hush-hush. Again, Fox News, you got to hand it to them. I mean, they are in bed with the enemy, 100%. Again, I just flipped it on and was watching a little bit. And you can see, of course, all of the inconsistency. And at the exact same time, they're interviewing CIA agents like they're actual guests. I mean, I was watching it again in the middle of the day just the other day on Saturday. And the reporter, I don't know if it was John Scott or somebody else, but he was openly talking with this young-looking kid who's a CIA agent wearing a CIA lapel pin and saying that he lives in the area, but he doesn't have any information to share. But, we're a really tight community, and we're teachers, and we're nurses, and we're doctors, and we all care about each other, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying to myself, why are you even talking to this guy? This guy has no information. He has no intel as to what actually happened. He's just a CIA agent that you happen to be talking to who happens to live there, so we're told. It's beyond strange. Again, deception is the name of the game here. And narrative control is the name of the game. Everybody's being lied to all of the time. So again, I'm sticking with this. If the mainstream media is telling you it's one way, it's probably not. And there's no way again that Blackhawk explosion was an accident. That was not some fluke accident. Pete Hegseth would have to say that. It's like his second day on the job. He would have to say such a thing. We're going to get to the bottom of it, we're going to look into it, and blah, blah, blah. And I also remember this, and I want to play this audio because I remember this, and then I'm glad somebody else put this video together about this. But regarding the Blackhawk, there was a guy on Fox News also who openly said that this kind of Blackhawk doesn't have a black box, that there's no internal transponder, so there's no way to actually hear what the individuals inside of the Blackhawk were actually saying, let alone, again, any other bits of information, apparently, allegedly. And then, of course, right after that, they came out with a news headline on Fox News that openly said that the black box has been recovered from the Blackhawk helicopter. So which is it? There's either a black box associated with it or there isn't. It's got 9/11 vibes all over this. And again, who was behind 9/11 really? It was Israel. And guess who's in town? Netanyahu. What are the odds? Anyway, give this a listen very quickly in 3, 2, 1.
Wait, what? Officials just said that they recovered a black box from the Blackhawk military helicopter. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, announced during a news conference that they've recovered the black box from the Blackhawk helicopter in Wednesday's crash at Reagan National Airport. The black box will help investigators figure out what went wrong amid the crash. But wait, I thought that this type of Blackhawk helicopter did not have a black box. Watch this.
It's critical to note that this aircraft, the Blackhawk, the Lima model Blackhawk specifically, does not have your standard voice recorder black box that people are used to hearing about. You're going to have to rely on the external recordings of the tower air traffic control and the videos that you've seen taken from various cameras around DC.
I just find this to be very interesting information. So what kind of a black box did they recover? Because just days ago, you've been telling us investigators were going to have to rely on external footage and audio.
Again, it doesn't really matter if there was a black box or not. None of that really matters. It's an old story. It's an old script. It's been played before. It was played over 24 years ago on 9/11. And, here we are again. Same old story. Slow drip of information. When it should be lightning quick, everybody should know exactly what really happened as soon as it happened practically, but that's not happening. And, then you have, of course, conflicting stories and very odd people making their way to television and then telling all kinds of stories and fairy tales about a number of different things while not even being qualified to even speak about it. And then again, if a mistake gets made on their end, they don't admit it. And they just keep running with whatever story they're told to run with, because again, the news agencies are all controlled by the CIA by and large. So, yeah, I'm just getting a lot of 9/11 vibes with all of this. It's certainly strange, and again, people are dying and we are at war. And again, if Mossad is behind this in collaboration with the CIA, because they're basically two fingers on the same hand, that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. It's their MO. It's exactly what they do all of the time. So again, what's the motive for any of this? I'm not entirely sure. Is it to garner more support for anything that goes on in the Middle East? Not entirely sure. But I just find all of this happening and coinciding with Netanyahu's, visit here at the White House and in America to not be an accident. So, yeah, he's the enemy. I think most of us know that. Anybody defending him is a complete fool, not taking in ample amounts of evidence. And yeah, that's essentially it. There's also, of course, been some predictive programming with a number of movies that have come out in recent days. There's the Mark Wahlberg, who again was a Mossad agent and had Mossad ties for some time, if he still doesn't to this day, called Flight Risk. Rather interesting, I think. And then about a couple years ago, there was a movie called Knock at the Cabin with Dave Bautista. And in that movie, you have planes falling out of the sky all over the United States and exploding, of course, and then people dying and a number of other things in complete chaos, and then a script that the media runs with and tells everybody why it's happening when in fact it's happening for other reasons. And there you go. Again, dropping planes out of the sky is something that I've brought up on the show before in years past, because this is a move that, of course, the bad guys have at their disposal. Hacking airplanes and taking over the internal mechanisms of an airplane is doable. This is a doable thing. And they, of course, also want people, as even Jesse James reminded me and brought to my attention, that they want individuals to not travel. They want individuals to stay right where they are. And so again, people can assume with all of these crashes happening lately that travel is probably down a little bit, certainly as far as the airlines are concerned. Although a lot of people who fly on airplanes really don't care what happens to the airplanes. Certainly not the ones in society and the ones around them in their own country. They're still going to fly because if their job requires it, well, remember, job comes first. And they don't, again, even stop to think for a minute as to what's happening on a grander scale. I'm not 100% certain how to wrap this up regarding these crashes. I would probably just say that I think that the approach here is that it's most likely some kind of a computer hack of some kind. And that right there is a tool in the toolbox that has been available for a very long time. It continues to exist to this day, and I think that people should expect to see more of that, certainly in the future. Let me shift gears here. I came across this particular post on one of the chat boards that I'm associated with, and it was an interesting little summary having to do with Casey Wasserman, who again is associated with the larger Wasserman family. And these are the individuals apparently who have, of course, a great stake in California and certainly southwestern California, LA area, Hollywood, all of that stuff. Certainly a bit of mafia associations as well. And as it turns out, one of these Wassermans, a Casey Wasserman, is now apparently on the board of the group that has been headlined in that general area to so-called rebuild the Palisades, as it were. Ample pictures of this individual also with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein at the exact same time. So someone put this together. I'm going to give this a read here. Rather interesting, I think, because again, the Palisade fire and all of that arson, out of the news. No one's really bringing it up anymore. Other than the fact, again, that Fox News is occasionally on it from time to time, and they're saying, well, look at all these people in hazmat suits picking up all of this, toxic material out of the ground. It doesn't make any sense what's going on over there, but either way, here's what it said. It said the following, quote, regarding Casey Wasserman is his name. It says his grandfather, Russian Jew, Wasserman was the link between the mafia, the Hollywood film industry, and Reagan, who obtained very lucrative deals as an actor with Wasserman as his agent. By 1947, just after Al Capone died, and still with the help of his alliance with the underworld, Wasserman was instrumental in helping Reagan to become president of the Screen Actors Guild, which kicked off Reagan's rise to power. Reagan allowed MCA to work both as a producer as well as an agent, which enabled the mafia to earn a huge income, unquote. It says him, Casey Wasserman, was the son of Jack Norman Myers, formerly Meyerowitz, and the LA socialite and philanthropist Lynn Wasserman. After his father was convicted alongside reputed mobster Chris Petty, if I'm saying that right, of money laundering, Casey Wasserman began using his mother's maiden name, most likely to escape his family ties to serious organized crime. In an interview with Jack Myers conducted by author Dennis McDougall, who wrote The Last Mogul, a biography of Lew Wasserman, Myers said, quote, "My son changed his name to Wasserman. I said, Casey. First of all, everyone will think you're a fool if you do that. You look like an idiot," unquote. Yet Wasserman appeared more interested in obscuring his links to the mob than keeping his paternal name. In 1952, Lew and Eddie Wasserman founded the Wasserman Foundation, of which Casey Wasserman eventually became president and chief executive officer. The Wasserman Foundation became a major contributor to the Los Angeles Police Foundation as well as a major donor to the Democratic Party. It says on the Gahanian leg of the trip, Casey traveled alongside his wife, movie music supervisor Laura Wasserman. Her grandfather had been the Democratic Party leader, Paul Zephyrin, who was also the chairman of the group, which had successfully won Los Angeles' bid for the 1984 Olympics. Casey Wasserman was reported in 2016 as having led the effort for the 2024 bid. It was reported by Variety.com on the 13th of October 2016 that, quote, in 1991, Bill Clinton attended his first major introduction to Hollywood fundraising circles at the Home, when the Wassermans hosted an event that August for the Democratic National Committee. They threw another fundraiser for him in August of 1992, and then after he won the presidency that December, according to Variety Archives, unquote. It says the latter article also gave a clue to how important the Wasserman family dynasty had been for the manipulators of post-World War II political history, stating, quote, other guys at the Home through the years, including a host of governors and senators, as well as Henry Kissinger, when he was Secretary of State. Jimmy Carter was a largely unknown Georgia governor when he first met Lew Wasserman, but he said in a 1982 interview that Wasserman's backing proved extremely helpful, unquote. So this is the guy, Casey Wasserman, again, is the dude associated with that family who now apparently is sitting on a board of other individuals, which oddly enough also includes, allegedly, Magic Johnson. Again, you can't make this up. These people are so dirty. And of course, that entire family background, including the mafia, is all filled with Jews. So why this shocks anybody is beyond me. But it's beyond disgusting. Again, I don't know how that's going to pan out in the Palisades and certainly in that area of California with all of the destruction and everything. I have no idea how that's even going to pan out, but it better get itself fixed. Hopefully there's some surveillance of the individuals that are there and certainly the politicians and what they're actually doing. Just seems like a giant crime scene, and all the criminals, again, are gathering around one another in an effort to profit from the very crime that they perpetuated in the first place. I don't know. It's gross. Speaking of things, however, that are not gross, here's a little bit of good news. This was from the U.S. Department of Defense, and it's titled, in their memo here for immediate release, Identity Months Dead at Department of Defense. It says the following here, quote, our unity and purpose are instrumental to meeting the department's warfighting mission. Efforts to divide the force, to put one group ahead of another, erode camaraderie and threaten mission execution. Going forward, Department of Defense components and military departments will not use official resources to include man-hours to host celebrations or events related to cultural awareness months, including National African American Black History Month, Women's History Month, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Pride Month, yay, all of this is good, National Hispanic Heritage Month, National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and National American Indian Heritage Month. Service members and civilians remain permitted to attend these events in an unofficial capacity outside of duty hours. Installations, units, and offices are encouraged to celebrate the valor and success of military heroes of all races, genders, and backgrounds as we restore our warrior culture and ethos. We are proud of our warriors and their history, but we will focus on the character of their service instead of their immutable characteristics. This guidance is effective immediately. I don't know why it says effective immediately perhaps, but anyway, there you go. Good. They shouldn't be wasting their time with those ridiculous holidays and awareness months either. It's nonsense. Schools shouldn't even be doing it. I mean, no one should be doing it. Just put it aside. We've dealt with it enough for 4 years. Get rid of it. It's stupid. Stop putting them on calendars like Juneteenth and all this other nonsense. It's outrageous. One quick little update here, speaking of outrageous, as I'm recording this, there was apparently a flight that was grounded as it was apparently attempting to take off out of Houston, Texas, and one of the engines was on fire. So, there you go. Again, it's worth keeping in mind that the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion excuse might very well be, again, a CIA trick to divert individuals' attention away from what's really going on. Again, I think that the remote-controlled aspect of a lot of this, and certainly the shortcomings and shortfalls and poor manufacturing and a number of other things, are all elements as to why all of these so-called crashes have been taking place. But, yeah, I don't think it's just because a lesbian is behind the yoke. I think there's something else. There's certainly other things going on here. And again, I think hacking is the most readily available and certainly the most plausible, because it's the one thing, of course, that the mainstream media is not discussing. That kind of gives it away right there. Okay, education stuff. I've got a few things. First of all, there was this executive order which I didn't make mention of in the last episode, but I want to spend a little time on this one. This was again signed on January 29th, keeping in mind that executive orders are basically broad suggestions and essentially a giant billboard as if to say, here's what we plan on advocating for, here's what we plan on doing. If you're a lawmaker or a law writer, you might do well to start writing laws that support this kind of thing. And this was titled Expanding Educational Freedom and Opportunity for Families. It says the following here: by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, and to improve the education, well-being, and future success of America's most prized resource, her young citizens, it is hereby ordered, Section 1, Purpose, parents want and deserve the best education for their children, but too many children do not thrive in their assigned government-run K-12 school. According to this year's National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP, 70% of 8th graders were below proficient in reading and 72% were below proficient in math. Moreover, geographically based school assignments exacerbate the cost of housing and districts with preferred schools, straining the finances of millions of American families sacrificing for their children's future. Which, by the way, I saw a massive chart just the other day of endless Chicago public school systems where 0% of their students are proficient in reading. 0. And again, it was dozens of schools. It goes on here, it says, when our public education system fails such a large segment of society, it hinders our national competitiveness and devastates families and communities. For this reason, more than a dozen states have enacted universal K-12 scholarship programs, allowing families rather than the government to choose the best educational setting for their children. These states have highlighted the most promising avenue for education reform: educational choice for families and competition for residentially assigned government-run public schools. The growing body of rigorous research demonstrates that well-designed education freedom programs improve student achievement and cause nearby public schools to improve their performance, or they collapse, which is actually the better option, in my humble opinion. It says Section 2, Policy. It is the policy of my administration to support parents in choosing and directing the upbringing and education of their children. Section 3, Guidance and supporting state-based K-12 educational choice. Within 60 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Education shall issue guidance regarding how states can use federal formula funds to support K-12 educational choice initiatives. And by the way, isn't it interesting that Linda McMahon, I don't believe, has been awarded the position? It's possible she's just been given the position of Secretary of Education, but again, I haven't seen her confirmation hearing take place yet, and I don't know. Maybe she was just given the position again by Trump on, of course, the interim basis for 200 some odd days to hopefully bring the entire department to its knees. Because even Thomas Massie has reintroduced his legislation to get rid of the Department of Education. So we'll see what happens. But it goes on here, Section 4, Encouraging Education Freedom through Discretionary Grant Programs. The Secretary of Education shall include education freedom as a priority in discretionary grant programs as appropriate and consistent with applicable law. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Education shall review their respective discretionary grant programs and each submit a plan to the President through the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy that identifies, evaluates, and makes recommendations regarding using relevant discretionary grant programs to expand education freedom for America's families and teachers. Section 5, Expanding Opportunities for Low-Income Working Families. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall issue guidance regarding whether and how states receiving block grants for families and children from the department, including the Child Care and Development Block Grant, can use them to expand educational choice and support families who choose educational alternatives to governmental entities, including private and faith-based options. That also, of course, because it's private and faith-based, would include something like Abeka.com. See, this right here is the move that has to be made. You have to open up the internet as the ultimate place for individuals to learn, because that's where, of course, copious amounts of information exists, far more than in your standard brick-and-mortar classroom, certainly even at the private and charter school level. It's the internet environment that has to gain steam here, and if those families get that tax money back locally, then public schools will become a thing of the past, which, as you know, I absolutely love that idea. Section 6, it says, Helping Military Families. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Defense shall review any available mechanisms under which military-connected families may use funds from the Department of Defense to attend schools of their choice, including private, faith-based, or public charter schools, and submit a plan to the President describing such mechanisms and the steps that would be necessary to implement them beginning in the 25-26 school year. Good. Section 7. Again, that screams online also. Section 7, Helping Children Eligible for Bureau of Indian Education Schools. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of the Interior shall review any available mechanisms under which families of students eligible to attend BIE, Bureau of Indian Education Schools, may use their federal funding for educational options of their choice, including private, faith-based, or public charter schools, and submit a plan to the President describing such mechanisms and the steps that would be necessary to implement them for the 25-26 school year. The Secretary shall report on the current performance of BIE schools and identify educational options in nearby areas. And then finally, Section 8, General Provisions. Again, it's just basically their legalese here. It says, Nothing in this order shall be construed or impaired as otherwise affect the authority granted by law to an executive department or agency or the head, blah, 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 blah. And it goes on and on and on. And that's essentially it. Again, this is up to the states, but more specifically, it's always been up to the families. The idea is that state government needs to get tax money away from the public school system and give it back to the families. Because if given the option, families will always choose to take the money to then again freely use that money any way they see fit, which, let's face it, it's their money to begin with, and then allow them, of course, to use their own money to seek out any form of education that they want for their children. And why would they not choose an online environment? They get to keep copious amounts of money for themselves, spend a very small amount, we're talking like $300 a year, if that, on their own child's education online, certainly regarding K-12 schooling. And then again, they'll graduate sooner than the age of 18 or 17. And then they'll be out and they'll have a high school diploma. And then again, they can go and they can work, they can pick trade school, they can do another online college if they want, and they'll probably get a diploma from an online college accredited university before the age of 21. This is all a fantastic thing. The sad part, of course, is that you're going to always have school board members at the American K-12 level, certainly at the public level, and they're always going to advocate for public school. They will scream at the top of their lungs until the day they die that public school is the greatest thing since sliced bread and that they are an advocate for it. Again, they're rearranging deck furniture on the Titanic. They're spending more money than they have. They're in debt. More schools across the board, of course, accepted all the COVID cash. All that's gone now. They spent it like a drunken sailor. It's all gone. And at the exact same time, they're now begging for levies. And this is one of the things, again, that's happening all across the United States. It started hitting smaller school districts first, but now the bigger ones, they can't hide their financial woes. So again, as you've heard me say before, the homeschooling family and the home learning family is laughing at all of the troubles that American public schools are having because they have no idea what they're doing. Not a clue. And they continue again to hire individuals and vote people in who still have all of these radical agendas where, again, they're operating on feeling instead of fact, and they don't even know how to run a multi-million-dollar business. So that's a recipe for disaster. It's a horrible business model, always has been, will continue to be. And I don't know how else to chop it up there, but again, freeing up tax money at the state level is the next move. That's the next dam to break, and it has to break here. Because again, this education freedom movement isn't stopping. Most people did it again during 2020 because they said, we don't believe these lies. And as you've heard me say, this is that right there is one of the major elements and variables in the equation that American public schools cannot understand. They don't understand why families walked away from public schooling in 2020. And the answer is very simple. They didn't buy into the COVID lie. But if you were to say that to school board members, they would look at you like, what? COVID lie? What are you talking about? But that's the answer. It wasn't just the mask-wearing abuses, the distancing, the carrying around the plastic shields and all that other nonsense, which, by the way, again, has all been proven to be fake. Most people know that, but school boards don't because, of course, they've never apologized for it. They've never said, you know what? I've looked at all the data. I've looked at all the evidence, certainly enough to arrive at a logical conclusion, and we were wrong. We were wrong about the entire COVID thing, and we're sorry. You're never going to hear that out of these school board members. Regardless of the school district, I haven't heard a single one apologize for any of it, even as their own staff members are falling ill and dying, even as all these administrators are being moved around on a constant basis and teachers are retiring in droves and 1,000 other things, and their enrollment is dropping. They're not admitting fault, which means they're going to repeat it time and time again. Case in point, shifting gears slightly here, Cicely sent me this from New Mexico. This has to do with the state of New Mexico reversing its cell phone policy in schools. It says, bill incentivizing New Mexico schools to lock up student cell phones moves forward. This is another prime example of what happens when they implement the problem by allowing cell phones to exist, and now they say they don't want them. Now we know the real reason why, and it's twofold. They don't want cell phones in schools anymore because they're catching illegality at the hands of teachers themselves. and their fellow students. And number two, the cell phone is a learning device if used properly. And you're going to get more truth via a cell phone as sort of the vector of information, as opposed to, again, being in a brick and mortar class and listening to some nitwit at the front of the room who doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. So give this news report a listen here. Again, this is from krqenews.com in 3, 2, 1.
Time to get New Mexico school kids locking up their cell phones during class. And a bill to help school districts do that is already winning approval in the Roundhouse. News 13's Jessica Barone is live at the Capitol after talking to the senator sponsoring that effort. Jessica?
The bill is being called the anti-distraction policy, and it would make millions of dollars available for schools to start programs to lock and store cell phones during teaching hours.
Our students are spending well over 5 hours a day on social media apps, and we have to come in and really kind of break that cell phone addiction.
Republican Senator Crystal Brantley says that feeling is shared by educators who've told her cell phones are now among the biggest distraction in New Mexico schools. She's sponsoring Senate Bill 11, which would define an anti-distraction policy. The bill would force PED to encourage schools to make policies locking up cell phones, while also offering $10 million to pay for equipment to do it.
What the policy looks like is completely up to individual districts. As we know, a school district in Quamato may need to adopt a different policy than the Albuquerque school district.
In a first committee debate last night, some think it would help improve student proficiency.
This bill will help teachers perform one of their main duties, which is to help students focus academically and socially.
This isn't about limiting access to technology. It's about ensuring technology supports rather than hinders the learning environment.
But some are worried about what happens to the funding.
What is the maximum a district can spend? It doesn't say. It says they'll get reimbursed. That's pretty open-ended checkbook, it sounds like.
Brantley sees this ultimately as a bipartisan issue.
This is something that is bringing together major teachers that have asked for this. 97% of teachers, this is their number one distractor, is cell phones. We're meeting the needs of the teachers and the needs of students.
Some parents have also raised concerns about cell phones being locked up during emergencies, but Senator Brantley says there are some options for products that allow for easy emergency access. Back to you.
All right, Jessica, thank you. The bill passed the first committee last night and now heads to the Senate Finance Committee.
Again, I could spend all day on this subject, but without being too repetitive, I'll make it brief. There are a number of reasons why this is happening. Yes, I know that they are, in fact, a distraction within classroom settings and certainly within school environments. That goes without saying. However, if a student doesn't have the ability to access their phone to ask a question or look up factual information in the face of a teacher who's teaching a particular subject, then you're forcing the child to basically sit there and continue to be indoctrinated and listen to a teacher who doesn't know what they're talking about. That's an issue. Information does not exist that way in a home learning environment. It's freewheeling. If you have a question, you can look it up. You don't have to sit and still be, again, controlled by the machine, by having somebody say, you're not allowed to look that up, or you can't search for this particular answer, or you can't ask that particular question, because again, in the brick and mortar setting, the person at the front of the room is the arbiter of all things true. That just isn't logical in the world that we live in. Again, it's training people. As we know, the entire school system trains individuals for the workforce. It's designed to get people to listen to a boss and do what the boss says no matter what. Even if the boss tells you to do something illegal, well, they're the boss, so I don't have a choice. I just have to do it. This is teaching them a terrible lesson. Not to mention the amount of money that's going to be wasted on buying these other technology tools like Faraday cages and, swipe badges and all these other passes and all this other nonsense where the students have to lock up their cell phones rather than it just being an expectation. And saying, see that closet door? Turn your phone off and put it in there. You've got yourself a little phone cubby because you're all nuts and you don't know how to practice self-control and just keep it off in your bag anyway, so we're going to create this little cubby for all your cell phones, and they can just sit in there for the next 45 minutes, and then when it comes time to leave, you can go get your phone. Again, it's Pavlov's dog. You're just training these individuals again to be a part of the machine and another brick in the wall. It's disgusting. But they're doing it again in a full reversal of their initial policy, which they've had in place for years, upwards of, I'd say, 20. It's just nuts. It's absolutely crazy, certainly since flat-screen smartphones, as it were, but yeah, it's beyond embarrassing. Again, it's a full admission that they were wrong, but you're not going to hear them apologize. You're not going to hear them say, you know what, we got it wrong. We implemented cell phones because we took the approach of we can't beat them, let's join them. We took the advice of NGOs that wanted to distract students and make them dumber. They ended up doing that, but wouldn't you know it, some students actually ended up learning a whole lot more, creating classroom conflict as a result of being able to access the internet in a faster fashion, then making our teachers look bad, and then wouldn't you know it, they were catching illegality taking place within the schools also, and we can't have that either because it creates more work for us. That's what this is all about. Again, what a headache. What a waste of time. Just go home. just stay home. Get online. Look up accredited online K-12 programs and use those. And you can use your cell phone all day long if you want. This has to be the change. This has to be the shift. This has to be the major exodus that happens in the next 4 years. We have to see American K-12 schools continue to close their doors and collapse. Yes, I would love for Christian brick-and-mortar schools to continue to exist, certainly classical curriculum schools that are filled with individuals who actually know what the truth is and wants to help young ones. I'm all for that. But at the same time, teaching them even in those environments to learn on their own, even in a home environment, that's real education. That's real tutelage. Because learning doesn't stop and start when a bell rings. Again, that's a science experiment, and that's a human experiment, and that's not healthy for anybody. So, that's my 2 cents, and I'm sure I'll repeat that time and time again in upcoming episodes, no doubt about it. Okay, jab-related things. Let me mention this first. A lot of individuals online yelling and screaming about RFK's last 2 hearings, and I saw the second one, and the second one was good also, but a lot of people, again, were criticizing him for saying, why is he supporting vaccination? Because he's saying that he doesn't want to, again, deviate from the childhood schedule, and he wants to keep vaccines on the record, and this, that, and the other. He knows what vaccinations do to people. He's litigated these cases, he's read these studies, he's published it in his books. He's well aware. He's not ignoring the facts during certainly those last 2 hearings that he had, which the hearings are done with now. But he's not ignoring the facts. But what he is doing, and this is real, is you have to tell those criminal senators what they want to hear. Because as he even said and called Bernie Sanders out for it, they represent the pharmaceutical industry. They represent the largest killer in American history and in American government. And as a result of that, yeah, RFK, in order to get inside, he has to tell them what they want to hear. And it's not what we want to hear, but we know otherwise. Anybody, again, listening to RFK in the past and reading what he's written, you would know that that's in fact the case, that he knows what's going on with all vaccination. Doesn't matter which vaccination. Again, even Susan Collins with her, her voice problems as a result of, again, vaccination. And RFK is vaccine damaged as well. That's why his voice shakes, and that's why he has that condition also. This is all vaccine damage, and it's right in front of everybody's face. But at the same time, if Senator Susan Collins from Maine is going to bring up, you're not going to do away with the polio vaccine, are you? And he goes, no, I'm not going to do away with that. And she goes, oh, well, that's good. That's a good thing. The fact is polio doesn't exist. It's a series of symptoms as a result of being poisoned. And that was brought on by DDT. And it was brought on by the polio vaccine. Again, that's the fairy tale. That there's no way that the vaccine actually causes the symptoms of the name of the actual illness. because that's all names of illnesses are. They're just names given to symptoms. Well, Mitch McConnell has polio. No, he doesn't. He took the polio shot, and then he got ill, and it screwed with his central nervous system. Period. That's it. So yes, he has to say these things in order to get approved so that he doesn't, again, expose the real exposure in that Senate hearing, because that's not the time nor the place. As much as we would love that to be the case, what would they do? They would shout him down, because everybody's on a timetable in those hearings. Everybody's got 5 or 7 minutes to give their piece. They shout back and forth, and then nothing really gets accomplished. So yeah, he's got to play the game. And that is a real thing. Even Amazing Polly was like, I can't believe people are defending RFK and saying he's in support of vaccines in order to just get inside NIH and Health and Human Services, and ultimately then flip things upside down once he gets inside. Well, the answer is yes, because that's how it works. Again, you have to wear a costume and a disguise in order to get in the front door. And everybody knows this. Again, Kash Patel was doing the same thing in his hearing. He was dismissing individuals in podcasts that he had been on numerous times, including Stu Peters' show, talking about, again, government corruption and the COVID line and a number of other things. And then during the hearing, he blows it off like he doesn't know who those people are. Of course he does. You have to play the game in order to get inside. Once you're inside, that's when you can blow shit up. That's when you start declassifying documents. That's when you start exposing unredacted emails and unredacted documentation that contradicts the mainstream narrative and the criminal narrative that's been going on this entire time for hundreds of years. So yeah, it doesn't bother me that he says he wants to keep vaccinations in place. He has to say that. He knows what the American people want. He knows that vaccine trust is in the ground. It's not about rebuilding government trust in the medical industry. That's what the criminals will tell you. But he has other plans because he has to have other plans, because that's the plan. So, again, just wanted to make mention of that. Not to mention, in those hearings, you're not going to hear this, of course. This was on Zero Hedge last week, and it was titled, Pfizer to pay more than $60 million in false claims settlement over drug kickbacks, DOJ announces. Kind of a big deal. Again, false claims allegations relating to improper physician payments by one of its subsidiaries, according to a Department of Justice statement. It says the DOJ said that between March of 2020 and September of 2022, Pfizer's subsidiary, Biohaven Pharmaceuticals, violated the Federal False Claims Act by providing speaker honoraria and meals at high-end restaurants to doctors to induce them to prescribe Nutrec, ODT, a migraine drug, more often. Well, if they can do that with a migraine drug, we've been over it here on the show, and you're well aware of what they were doing regarding the COVID shots. Same stuff. Receiving insurance kickbacks that were massive. The Blue Cross Blue Shield memo, of course, that went out that everybody was liking and sharing and reading, showing all the percentage kickbacks. It's massive. It's a criminal organization. We know this. But in order to get inside the criminal organization, you've got to tell the criminals what they want to hear first. Now, speaking of that, I wanted to make mention of this too. I bounced over on Substack, and I put together a Substack here the other day, and it is titled Theorizing Operation Warp Speed. Years of anonymous posts about the meaning of the COVID vaccine quote-unquote rollout. The reason that I put this together was because I continuously hear again individuals reference Operation Warp Speed in a one-dimensional frame of mind. The name has multiple meanings. And as I lay out, of course, in the article, and as you've heard me say here specifically on the show, it had to do with speeding up the entire medical industry's plans from what they wanted to do, which was, of course, lock people down for years, forced vaccination, no choice, and then you can come out of your house, and oh, by the way, if you can't go to your job, then you're going to lose your home because you're not going to be able to pay on it. And then, of course, BlackRock swoops in and takes everybody's property, and then you're left homeless, and then, of course, you're left dead. because you took the shots because you believed the government narrative and the mainstream media and XYZ, and wouldn't you know it, again, Depopulation Agenda 101. Operation Warp Speed sped all of that up. It sped all of it up for the purpose, again, of amplifying their plans, but also reminding individuals, as Donald Trump did at the very start, of all the alternatives that exist to vaccination. That, of course, is a very key element that a lot of people, even those in the alternative truth movement media, like even Stu Peters, conveniently leave out. They leave out the chronology, rather, of the entire scheme and what was actually happening. And how there's, again, absolutely no way that Donald Trump would not know what was really going on. This is what happens, again, when you give power back to the people. You have to take it from the enemy first. And that's exactly, again, what Operation Warp Speed was. So I would encourage people to bounce over there and give that a read. Again, it's loaded with anonymous posts. First, a big Q post describing the 16-year plan to destroy America, which was 8 years of Barack Obama, of course, and then 8 years of Hillary Clinton and what that was going to do. Foreign wars, invasion, UN, global control, global government, and then, of course, killing us and citizens around the world with shots, and, of course, based on a fake illness and keeping everybody locked down until they're all dead. That was part of that plan. But again, there's multiple anonymous posts toward the end of that particular article where individuals, again, on lots of different chat boards at the time, years ago, were talking about what this exactly means. And it's a nice reminder, I think. And I've been sitting on it for a while thinking I wanted to put something like that together, but I finally put it together, and there it is. So again, feel free and bounce over there and give it a read if you're interested. It's a nice history lesson. And again, it's posts like this that you'll find, of course, all throughout the Storm books that I put together for that entire year. And certainly it's within the Storm series right there. So there you go. Okay. One last thing. There will be another Substack this week that I also put together over the weekend. I'm going to release that, I think, on either Tuesday or Wednesday. I got on the top 4 largest AI platforms, and I typed in the question, write a short essay about who really controls the world. Now, you may recall that in one of the past war videos, someone had done that with, I think it was DeepSeek AI. They had asked it that question, although theirs more specifically was, write a 5-page essay on who really controls the world. The question I asked all of these AI systems was just, write a short essay describing, again, who really controls the world. And you'll see the similarities, and you'll see the differences. And there is some honesty, but it's a nice sort of qualitative reasoning and analysis exercise, we'll call it. Because, again, you'll see those similarities, and you'll see the vast differences also. So, again, that'll be released later this week. Make sure and keep an eye out for that. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening as always, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.